Hi, my name is Valerie Varan. I'm a licensed professional counselor who has been in private practice since 2006, working with energy sensitives and experiencers of higher consciousness, whether near death, out of body, spiritual, and other kinds of multidimensional states. In this multi-part series on the nature of reality and quantum consciousness, my guest is quantum physicist Anirban Bandyopadhyay. Here in part one, you will hear him address the question as to how he sees the multidimensional aspect of our quantum reality, since experiencers commonly use the term when describing their experience of consciousness. Anirban rejects the traditional view of spacetime, that time could be derived from space only. He believes time could be a fundamental, that like we have 3 dimensions of space, we could actually have 3 dimensions of time. While Western science sees time as linear, as past, present, and future, he shares how time could be nonlinear also, such as when Einstein showed how light can bend and time goes slower or faster depending on gravity and mass. In India, Hinduism and Ayurvedic science, time is like a cycle. Picture nested spirals. We have new skin in 11 days, new blood in 3 months, new kidney in 17 months, new bone in 8 years, such that every part of our body is moving in this cycle in the 3D architecture of a clock. He says it is essential that Western science sees time as a cycle and also accept undefinedness or singularity. Not everything can be defined or limited like reality or consciousness. Scientific facts are illusion. They survive in a shorter time, but become untrue and imperfect in the longer time. It is absolutely impossible to make something absolutely true. This belief in absolute fact forces us to believe in very certain ways. And because of this belief, Western scientists do not have the capability to understand or the mentality to even appreciate different views. They are trained religiously to believe in certain premises. Anything other than that is considered non-scientific and charlatan. So we have to change and see time as nearly to the circular path, like a loop. And we have to realize that undefinedness or singularity is not zero. It is a situation where it is impossible to define the values. Where it is not, for example, dark or light, it is rather a shady part where it is both dark and light. That part contains much more information, and we have singularities at certain points in time. And these transitions from the fixed state, so like a spiritual awakening, it is a spiritual transition from the fixed state. So what happened is like time spheres glued together, where one ball has a shorter time period, faster, and another ball has slow time, a bigger ball. And so we see 3 dimensions of space, but the 4th, 5th, 6th dimensions are of time. And when many clock architectures come together, then the singularities, the undefinedness in the universe, are all connected. Anirban sees quantum as very normal and natural, and classical as amazing and shocking. Some see quantum as weird, but he sees it as magical, quantum, and even beyond quantum. While body is at a particular place in space, mind is in many places simultaneously, he says. That becomes the natural order. We are observing and experiencing as part of different loops. Observation is the only reality where there is no reality. Everything is Maya. All is perception, perception up to infinity, when you cannot have experience at any point in time that could be considered absolute. We cannot have an absolute sensor in science, he says. We can only observe a particular set of data, and we cannot take that as fact or nature. So here we have 3 dimensions of space, 3 dimensions of time, a total of 6 dimensions of our physical reality. And then 7th, 8th, and 9th dimension, geometric shape, pure geometric transition. For example, as he says, sperm is a teardrop, ovum like a circle. Sperm to ovum is the journey of one mathematical structure, a single equation. Or rain, as it falls, becomes a sphere under the influence of gravity. In the body too. Even in astrophysics, when an object falls into a black hole, it forms a teardrop. So everywhere in nature, we find this particular geometric shape. We call it morphogenesis. So particular geometric shape, transit and come back, transit and come back, he says. It has no bias for space. It has no bias for time. It has no bias for space-time. It is pure geometric transition. Now, after the ninth dimension, we have to go to the primes. All over the brain-body system, you see primes, microtubules with 13 protofilaments. Spinal cord has 31 channels, cortical column, 7 layers, hippocampus, 17 different cavities. Cerebellum, where all the synchronization for body movement happens, 19 different cavities. And horizontal and vertical arrays of neural networks crossing with each other to keep the time, the rhythm. Brodmann areas of the brain, 47. And so if we want to understand the whole brain, we can consider a few prime numbers. Prime numbers could be the fundamental code of the universe, he says. And when they are multiplying with each other, they are creating. We can measure how many ways we can arrange, for example, 12. Say 9 different ways, so triplet of triplet, and 12 is the first integer. We found triplet of triplet in the vibrations of the microtubules of the neurons, he said. After years at looking at the vibrational frequencies, we discovered that prime number of frequencies can come together, vibrate, and link. In the frequency or temporal space, they can link and build structure. So when we think of multidimensional, we should go to one higher. And that should be the practice of referring to dimensions, not just the geometric shape arrangement. In quantum mechanics, if we want to create a quantum circuit, he says, and say we have 36 qubits and we entangle them together, so on a sphere we will have 360 degrees. So in this example of quantum in the block sphere, we just pack more and more vectors coming out from the center of the sphere, and then we say that that is higher dimension. Whereas in the brain's information processing, after 6 dimensions, Anirban says, let the non-physical come out. Because if we do not have any other physical entity other than space and time, let the non-physical things come in. Anirban says, in string theory or in quantum mechanics, we tend to introduce one concept of dimension and we follow it and we make it increasingly complex. And it becomes increasingly higher dimension in our view. But he does not want to make it more complex. He wants to give it distinctness to every single dimension. Every single dimension will have a distinction of its own. And he adds, we cannot derive a particular concept of particular dimension using any other dimension. Every dimension is fundamental in its own nature. For example, the 7th dimension is a unique fundamental entity, conceptual entity in the universe. It's very important for him that we clarify about the uniqueness of any dimension. We want to understand the dynamics and we want to go hierarchy, but we don't just add more apples to our apples, as he says. Could be an orange or a pineapple. So it could be a fundamentally very different thing than the other part. Psychology, and I could not be more grateful to be having a discussion today with Anirban Bandyopadhyay. And I first saw Anirban at the 2016 The Science of Consciousness conference, where he was talking about the quantum oscillations within the neurons. And I was so glad to see his presentation. So a little bit more about Anirban. He's a senior scientist at the National Institute for Material Science in Japan, where he was tasked with developing an artificial brain. He possesses a PhD in physics, a Master of Science in Condensed Matter Physics, Computer, Numerical Analysis, and Astrophysics. He's been a visiting scientist at MIT and has received numerous awards. He is author of the 2020 book, Nanobrain, The Making of an Artificial Brain from a Time Crystal. And it explores the possibility of the brain and universe as a time crystal. More specifically, that a nested time crystal encompasses the entire conscious universe. Some of my favorite quotes from you, Anirban. It's a resonance chain all the way up. The brain or universe is a frequency fractal, and consciousness is its music seen everywhere. And last, these holes burst energy because the holes contain another information structure inside. We see the bursts and build an illusion of classical mechanics and classical world. In reality, quantum is real and classical is impossible. I can't believe in classical. I love that. So the purpose for today's discussion is twofold. One, to support experiencers and the practitioners who are trying to help them, and also to move us towards a more quantum psychology. So for near-death, spiritual, psi, and other anomalous experiencers, the research tells us that 1 in 5 are being harmed by mainstream psychology and medicine. They are labeled crazy despite all the evidence supporting psi. And because of that, they tend not to share their experiences with practitioners. And 70% of NDEers end up divorced. And we also know that it takes 5 to 30 years for most experiencers to even reveal something and to integrate their experience into their lives. So we do need a vocabulary, and we do need to head more towards a quantum psychology. And synthesizing across all these disciplines is not easy. So I am so grateful, Anirban, for you being with us today. So moving into the first question that I have for you. Among experiencers, there's a consensus that reality is multidimensional, consciousness is fundamental, and when consciousness is out of the body, there's a 360-degree view. I am me, but I am you, I am in all things and in all beings. It's very similar to idealism in philosophy. And there are certain quantum physics concepts that tend to resonate the most with experiencers. That is, consciousness is non-local, meaning it's defying the space-time rules. It's entangled, meaning there's simultaneous effects, and what affects one affects the other at the same time. That it's holographic, meaning the information for the whole is within each part. That consciousness is quantum, meaning it has these kind of non-local properties as well as others. And two other concepts, resonance and coherence, seem to be very key in understanding consciousness. So Anirban, if you would, can you elaborate on the essential meaning of these key concepts and how they play a role in our understanding of consciousness?
Oh, that was a lot.
That was a lot.
It was a lot. I mean, so many different concepts are put together, and we can have hours of conversation on each of them. And for an example, multidimensional. What do we mean by multidimensional? Um, uh, Different parts of science have very different perspectives on it, and we need to clarify. Then when I say that brain is 12 dimensional, I'm totally of the view that the Blue Brain project in Europe, they have looked inside the brain neural circuit, and they found that neurons are arranged in geometric shapes. So, and those geometric shapes integrate with each other. So it's a spatial dimension. So I have some objects here, some objects here, and I take another object there, and I make a triangle, and then those triangles make another triangle, and those geometric shapes make another geometry. So it's the integration of spatial integration 12 times. You go higher and higher and higher. I totally reject this view. And I think that this concept of 12 dimensions from Blue Brain project is totally flawed and wrong. Why? I don't know for what reason. In the last century, in the development of science, we have taken so much information from space, and we have a tendency to publish papers that say space is everything, and time could be derived from the space only. It's just a motion of space. But time could be um, fundamental. That means um, just like we have 3 dimensions of a space, we can have 3 dimensions of time. So um, uh, we need to change the fundamental concept of as we go higher and higher and higher dimensions. So these particular aspects need to be taken into account, and for that purpose, what we have to do is to think about um, uh, uh, what is time. So in the Western world, time is kind of a linear. There is a past, present, and a future, and mm, time could be non-linear also, like spatiotemporal dynamics, when there is a heavy mass, as Einstein showed in his calculations, that if the photon passes through the big mass, then it bends, so time goes slower. So time can go faster, time can go slower, and if the gravitational wave is coming in, then sometimes you are sitting here and gravitational wave is falling on you, then sometimes you will feel that time is very fast, and sometimes you will feel that time is very slow. And I mean, your body would experience the real time. So this is how time concept about time evolved in the Western world. But in India, with the perspective of Hinduism or Vedic philosophy of science, we always say that time is just like a cycle. So whatever goes comes back to the initial point. But it is also fundamental in the philosophy that you cannot come back to the initial starting point where you started walking. So it's a spiral. So you go, and that spiral again tries to make another circle, but again cannot, and makes another spiral. So this nested spiral goes on and on and on. So that's why we call it Kala Chakra. Kala means time, Chakra means cycle. Like the sixth in the Western world, it's very popular. They say awakening of Kundalini, awakening of your spinal cord, and all these particular information. But they forget chakra always means cycle. It's just like a circle you are roaming around. And then how do you go to how do you glue two different cycles? For an example, every day I wake up and have say uh, mm, look at the sun and then pray, and that happens every morning. See, it's a 24-hour cycle. Every 3 hours I take some food, so that there is a continuous supply of energy in my body. That's a 3-hour cycle. So my skin, I get a new skin in 11 days. I get 3 months new blood. I get 8 years totally new kind of bone. Every 17 months I get a new kidney. So every part of my body is moving in a circle, 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 clock architecture. So 3D architecture of clock. So um, mm, that's why it is essential that we introduce two different concepts um, to the Western science and fundamentally change the Western science forever. Otherwise, it will be very difficult um, mm, to, um, to go towards nature and understand it in its own way. Um, First is um, this time is a cycle, that is I have to make a circle or a clock, and the second is that um, undefined or singularity. So if you look at the science in the Western world, always everything has to be defined. There is like the concept started, fact, speak with a fact, talk about the logic. So they brainwash all over the world. The kids are brainwashed from their childhood. Even in India, Even we Hindus, we brainwash our kids that be logical, be logical, be always talk about fact. If you don't have fact, we talk about fact. It is considered as a pride. It is considered as a scientific. It is considered as a science. But we were never like that. We had the concept of Sat and Asat. Sat means that survives for a longer time. Asat means that survives for a shorter time. It is all about time. Every Sat, every fact, every truth becomes untrue and imperfect in longer time, and it's impossible to make anything absolutely true. So these things has to go. So when I wrote my book in 2020, I started first chapter, what are the 10 or 15 terminologies that brainwashes us that world has to be like this, like 0101. Everything has to come under the Turing machine. So all the facts, all the things that are happening in the universe, we have to consider that everything could be written in terms of true, false, true, false, true, false, true, false, true, false. So this forces us to believe in a very certain way. And that's the reason when anyone tries to come up with their own feelings, own emotions, own experiences, or whatever it is, the mainstream science and scientists do not have the capability to understand even the mentality to try to understand or appreciate what others are saying, or different kind of views, because we are trained religiously to believe in certain premises, and that should be considered as science. Anything other than that should be non-scientific, charlatan, and all these kind of things. So I feel in some way that, of course, in the 15th, 16th century, those who said that Earth is rotating around the sun was burned alive or given poison to kill. But um, but the very people, those very people, they didn't die. They didn't disappear from this planet. They became scientists. And after they became scientists, they started doing the same, killing other scientists, killing other views. That's why our progress is slow. So, so two things that we have to change. First is time has to be circular or nearly to the circular path. So it's just like a loop, so that we can take many different kind of spheres of different sizes, and you rotate around the equator of those circles and you get a clock. So many different kind of clocks you put together and create a 3D structure. And how do you put the clocks together? Because when your time passes, there is a point when you don't understand what is the time. It's called undefinedness, or that is the region, that is singularity, when you cannot fathom, you don't know. Singularity is not zero. It is a situation of when you cannot tell the values. uh, it is impossible to tell the values, the gradient, the way the system is changing in front of you. You can't see it. So imagine, so um, so what we can do is, it's almost like an ant is moving around a single straight line. Now the ant have no idea what is called a 2 dimension or a surface. It doesn't have. But the person who has the 2 dimensions and looking on the surface, he can tell, look, an ant, you are moving in only one direction. Similarly, those who have a z-axis, vertical, and looking at the surface, he can tell, okay, you are roaming around on a surface. You have to come to the volume. But after that volume spatial concept, you have to forget about space anymore, because you can't pack more than that. Then you start with time. You can have time that is circle. Then you have singularities and at certain point of time. So for an example, any period you take, 24 hours you take, there is a time when you are unconscious. So there is no cycle, no clock, no periodicity where a part of it is not undefined. So we have to start a culture of accepting the undefined, the part of um, neither dark nor light. Because again, in the Western world, you will find that there is a very distinct clarity. If it is not white, then it is dark. We cannot consider that there could be a region that is both dark and it has light. It's a shadow, it's a shady part. And that part actually contains much, much more information, like the morning, early morning time, or in the evening time, dusks. So when you experience both the darkness and light together, and you get a spiritual awakening or a spiritual transition from the fixed state. So what happened is that so time, we put them into a glue. One ball you have, and you insert, make a hole, and you put another ball. So one ball have a shorter time period or fast time, and you have a slow time, big ball, and you put them together. So when you start this practice, you can't go even 3 dimensions. So 3 dimensions of space, then you come fourth, fifth, and sixth dimension, where you talk about time. How can you integrate time and go to the higher dimensions of time? You go from time like a crystal, where you put many clocks together. Then the singularity, the undefinedness in the universe are all connected. So you come off of the view that there has to be classical points. So why I say, you mentioned in the beginning that I'm very against the classicality, or I think classical is amazing, shocking, and surprising. Quantum seems very normal and natural to me. And when I see from the, so people say that quantum is weird, quantum is magical, quantum is something. But on the other hand, we can say that quantum and beyond quantum, when we can move around different dimensions and consider that Anirban, its existence, its hand is somewhere, my head is somewhere, mind is at many, many places simultaneously. So that becomes the natural order of our thoughts. When we do not fix everything, that this has to be the truth, this has to be the false, no. But this is with this perspective, this is the how the cycle of truth runs. This is the cycle of false ones, and then they are together making a geometry, and we are just an observer, and we are experiencing as a part of different loops. Then observation is the only reality where we, even there is no reality. Then everything is just like a Maya, they call it. Why they say Maya? Because perception, 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 dot, 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 up to infinity. When you cannot have the real experience at any point of time, which is absolute in nature, your sensors with which you are making, whatever the sensor we make, we cannot have an absolute sensor in science. So what happens is that whatever you observe with a set of sensors, we consider the result derived is the truth. So there is a beautiful article called It from Bit, um, and where I think Arthur Winfrey talked about um, um, how do we infer a decision from nature. We observe it with a particular set of sensors, we take the data, and then we consider that this is nature. But this is what I am seeing it. And if I give you same instrument and you measure the same thing and you reproduce it, and then that is considered as truth, and we tag our perception of particular set of people on nature, and we say, okay, nature, you are like this. So this is the practice that we have to create the reality for us and absoluteness for us. Now the next part is, after 3 dimensions we reach sixth dimension. Then what happens then? Space and time, we have fully exhausted them. Now seventh, eighth, and ninth dimension is about geometric shape. So you will find it. So for 3 dimensions of space, 3 dimensions of time, total 6 dimensions is what is our physical reality. Then seventh, eighth, ninth dimension is geometric shape. How we can include and incorporate geometric shape. That means, imagine, have you seen that sperm looks like a teardrop and ovum looks like a circle? So teardrop to ovum, that is sperm to ovum, this is a journey of one mathematical geometric structure. It can be written in a single equation. And if you see, when raindrop falls, it turns to become a sphere under the influence of gravity. When you have a long chain, single chain polymer, and it tries to fold and unfold to become a protein molecule inside our body, then also it follows the dynamics of transitioning from a teardrop to an ellipsoid shape. So teardrop to ellipsoid shape you can find in astrophysical event, astronomical event, where in the distant skies you see that when an object falls into the black hole, also it forms a teardrop. So everywhere in nature, we find this particular geometric shape. We call it morphogenesis. So particular geometric shape transit and come back, transit and come back. So it has no bias for space. It has no bias for time. It has no bias for space-time. So it is pure geometric transition. So we get out, go beyond spatio-temporal dynamics and come to a non-physical feature of geometric shapes. But seventh, eighth, ninth dimension, after ninth dimension, we can't go even with the geometric shapes. Then we come counting the numbers or primes. So like in my book in 2020, I argued that all over the brain body system, wherever you go, microtubule has 13 protofilaments, spinal cord, 31 channels. Then you find cortical column, there are 7 different kind of layers. Hippocampus, 17 different cavities. You find that in our cerebellum, where all the synchronization for body movement and other things happen, it's a 19 different cavities or channels and interacting with 23 horizontal. So horizontal and vertical array of neural networks are crossing with each other to keep the timing, but they use prime number of cavities. So 47 Brodmann's region on the top of my head, and those Brodmann regions, each one have different functions, different neural circuits. Organization of neurons are very different in them. And so if I want to understand the whole brain, we can consider a few prime numbers, and prime numbers could be the fundamental code of the universe. And when they are multiplying or taking a product with each other, they are creating the whole integer systems. And when they do it, I can show it in my book. I think on the cover page of my book, you take it out, and this is the cover of my book. So this 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, this is the x-axis, and in the vertical we measure how many ways we can arrange. For an example, 12. When there is a 12 number, we can arrange it in 8 different ways or 9 different ways. So 9 is the triplet of triplet, and 12 is the first integer when we get this triplet. So we found the triplet of triplet in the vibrations of the microtubules in tubulin proteins in 2010, 2011. And for 3 years, I was looking at the vibrational frequencies years after years. And then we discovered that prime number of frequencies, they can come together, vibrate and link. And in the frequency or temporal space, they can link together and build the structure. So the first thing that I feel like to say that multidimensional, we should go to one higher plane of thoughts. And that should be the practice of calling dimensions, not just the geometric shape arrangement. And in quantum mechanics, for an example, I want to create a quantum circuit. So what do? I say I have 36 qubit. And 36 qubit, I entangle them together. So on a sphere, I will have 360-degree, that is the whole sphere, and by 36 cubit. So 10-degree solid angle, the vectors will come out. And you pack more and more such vectors as you go on. For an example, 360-degree, 360-qubit quantum computer you are making. You have a block sphere or a phase sphere, and 360 by 360, that is 2 pi by n. N is the number of qubit. So 1-degree solid angle, every solid angle, a vector will come out. And then you call it a multi-dimension. Okay.
So let me pause you for a moment.
Yeah.
Let's make sure that I and our viewers are keeping up with you, because multidimensional, like you're pointing out, it's a big word. And I think if I'm hearing you correctly, here's what you want us to know. It's the opposite of simple, and it's the opposite of factual, because every fact in science is superseded by another fact. And instead, you want us to see the complexity, the beauty, that you have dimensions of space, but then you have dimensions of time. You want us to pay attention to the spirals nature of it, the rhythms and the times. And beyond those dimensions of our thoughts of space and our thoughts of time, then we have to get into the geometries. And behind that, we have to get into the primes.
Yes.
And it's only when we're looking at this very beautiful complexity that you're describing to us does our mind explode, but we're realizing how limited Western science is in the way they view everything, because everything keeps getting viewed as a thing. And what you're describing for us is all these layers within layers within layers of various things, and why you had to get into the primes, and why perhaps quantum itself is so complex. So I'll be eager to see where you take us next, if I'm following you right.
Yeah, so I would just, you have followed me absolutely correctly. Just one point I would like to add, that whether it is a classical concept, it is a quantum concept, or whatever be the concept that has been developed, always we add on the terms. Like I said, give the example of quantum. In the block sphere, you just pack more and more vectors coming out from the center of the sphere, and then you say that it is higher dimension. In the brain's information processing, higher dimension means again add another axis, and you put the data over there, and you are very safe. So basically, conceptual transition is not happening. You are in the space, and you remain in the space. You say that I'm going higher dimensions and higher dimension and higher dimension. Basically, you are not making the journey. So I'm saying that give us a break. Okay. If you say 3-dimensional space, after that, you are not allowed to take any part of space, because you do not have that concept, right? After 3 dimensions of time, don't force me to add, okay, another time exists, another time exists, another time. It's just like locking the brain into some very dogmatic religious faith, something like. So give us a break after 6 dimensions. Don't talk about anything physical. Let the non-physical things come out. Because if you do not have any other physical entity other than space and time, if you do not have any physical entity, let the non-physical things come in. So after 3 dimensions of geometric, say 7 dimensions to 12 dimensions, you keep it free, because you don't have anything. Okay. So just because I like it, I would like to have it. So this tendency has to go. Only then you see that imaginary worlds. So string theory, or in quantum mechanics, because we are so much blind about that concept, I will introduce one concept of dimension, and I will follow it. I will make it more complex, more complex, more complex, more complex, and it will become higher and higher and higher dimension. So I little bit would like to edit the statement that you made, that I want to make it more complex. So no, I don't want to make it more complex. I want to give distinctness to every single dimension. Every single dimension will have a distinction of its own, and you cannot derive a particular concept of particular dimension using any other dimension. Every dimension is fundamental in its nature. So that's what
Beautiful.
I'm saying. So that, if suppose I'm in the fourth dimension, then using one first dimension, second dimension, third dimension, you can't create the fourth dimension. No. If I'm in the seventh dimension, using the first to sixth, and there are any combinations, you can't create the seventh dimension. Seventh dimension is an unique fundamental entity, conceptual entity in the universe. So that's the clarity that we should have, because it's very important. For an example, we want to understand the dynamics, and we want to go hierarchy. So this in the Western science, we always say there is a hierarchical thought. I mean, higher level. Higher level is nothing. It is the same level. I just add one more. I had one apple. I add two apple. Oh, I go higher level. So I have three apples. No, your higher level could be an orange or could be a pineapple. So it could be a fundamentally very different thing than the other part.